Hello, how are you out there today in TV land? I'm certainly glad that you could join me today. We have a very special guest in our studio today, and I can't wait to interview her because she has some precious information about education. You know, education is very, very important, especially today for our young people. There are so many challenges out there, and everyone may not know what's available to them in order to meet those challenges. So I had an interesting conversation with our guest, and I decided, and maybe we both decided, ultimately it was the Lord who decided, that it was time for her to come forth and share this very important information. I would like to say that our show has a theme, which is learn it, live it, and pass it on. So that's what we want to do. We want to learn something about the educational system. We want to find out where we fit in this educational component. And then once we do that and become a part of it, then we want to pass it on so that others can benefit by it, okay? So now I'm going to introduce you to our guest today, which is Dr. Patricia Djaw. And she is an educational services consultant, and her corporation is called Two Smiles for a Child. Patricia, Dr. Patricia, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, I'm so glad you decided to join us today. And we have some things that we want to share with our TV audience, and prayerfully it will make their lives and thoughts change with regard to education and what's available out there. The first thing we want to do, though, so that they can kind of get a feel for who you are, tell us what it is that you're doing right now that excites you, or that that at least lends itself to how valuable your services are. So we need to know what you're doing right now.
Well, I'm finding nonprofit organizations, city government, community organizations, small groups of grassroots organizations, and I'm helping them to develop services and programs to improve and enhance the quality of life and learning for youth.
Quality of life and learning for youth in what regard? Just give us an example of one of the specific things that you do for these organizations.
For example, I had the opportunity recently to work with a city government in Delaware County who had as its mission providing workplace training. And I went in and I was able to design a curriculum and mentor and do direct instruction and presentations with 20 youth 2 days a week.
2 days, great. Now, how do you determine where to take your services? How do they find you? How do they know that you are there?
I have been in the Delaware County providing services for the last 20 years. Mm-hmm. There are lots of organizations, consortiums that convene, and if you're interested and you have a service that you want to share, you attend these and you find service providers and educators and parents and other members of the community that would be at these gatherings, mm-hmm. and you present your services to them.
I see. So in essence, you're basically knowing what's going on in the community, and you market yourself directly to the community. Now, so does that mean that you join community organizations? Do you stay abreast? How do you stay abreast of what's happening in the community?
Well, as a parent, I found that it was an excellent opportunity for me to be able to identify the needs that children would have. So as a parent, I became very involved in my children's education. As a parent, I became involved in the city, in the school districts, meetings, and I became very, very participatory as a citizen. Mm-hmm. And as a consequence of that, I identified some needs that parents would have, for example. I identified needs that schools would have, all for the purpose of improving the quality of life and enhancing learning for youth.
Very good. Sounds like you've been busy, and you said it's been about 20 years, correct?
I actually started first came into this area down from Jersey City as a professional storyteller. I had a friend who was performing at Swarthmore, and they had invited her to go to a nearby community and enhance the children's capacity and knowledge about music. She invited me to come down. I came down as a storyteller, and I fell in love with the community, and I moved down. So it started with me offering my services as a storyteller, going into schools, telling stories. So that's another service that I also provide. And I make them culturally relevant. I make the stories engaging. I teach culture through these stories. So anything that can enhance the child's knowledge of themselves, knowledge of their history, that can empower them to fulfill their gifts and their potentiality. I design projects, programs, and work with others to do that.
Sounds like you're really, really busy, because there's a lot out there that needs to be done. And do you find many people are doing what you're doing, or is basically that's a little small, narrow-knit group?
I'm amazed at how many people in this particular area, the Delaware and Philadelphia area, that are vibrant and engaged in community and doing grassroots efforts, church-based, community-based, that I'm inspired and I'm supported in this work that I do. And one of the things that I feel is that I have information, I have experience, I have a commitment and a passion that I want to bring to what they're doing. I want to give support to them. I want to help them make what they're doing better, specifically taking advantage of the opportunities that they have to work with youth. So, for example, if someone is working, let's say, on fashion shows, and they're incorporating youth in it, and they're meeting the youth to build their sense of sensibilities about how to dress and how to carry themselves in a certain way, and so they do some kind of fashion shows. If you have those children there, I say, why not allow me to help you to infuse into that some literacy improvement aspect? So let me come in and help you to find out where the children are in terms of their literacy. Let me come in and create for you some projects that they can do that can engage them in reading, engage them in writing, so that since literacy is such a core need that we have in education to improve education for our youth, I want to see how I can connect with people who have children and infuse creative, engaging literacy activities into that. So that's just one example.
Okay, so that means that you're staying in touch with what is happening in the communities that you serve, vital. Okay, because you are the one who shows up to make your pitch for what you do to enhance what they're doing.
Absolutely.
Okay, and again, do others do the same thing you do, or there are not that many people doing what you're doing, showing up to pitch what they're doing? You know, how many people are doing what you are doing to make this a viable place where these organizations that are serving these youth can come and get help, or is it a very small a well to draw from?
Well, doing specifically what I do on the broad scope of which I do it,
yes,
I'm not finding many people doing that.
I didn't think so, and but it makes your services that much more valuable, because you do need to let the community know that you're there. And once they have worked with you, then obviously they like what you do because you've been around for quite a while.
Yes,
Amen.
and a core of what I do is to empower whoever it is that asks for my services.
Okay.
So I don't just come in and do the job. I come in, I do the job, and I teach the individuals how to carry forth the job once I'm gone.
Oh, that's very good, because there has to be a way of continuing the process so that others can benefit as time goes by. Now, I'm kind of interested in how you came up with the name for your organization, Two Smiles for a Child. Would you kind of give us a little background on how you came up with that name?
Well, to be honest with you, I've said this to people. I don't know if they believe me or not, but I sometimes have little angels that sit on my shoulders. And one day I was just going about my business, and I heard the little angel say, "Two smiles for a child." And it was just so exciting for me. I then had to define what that was. So based again on what made me happy and enthusiastic, I started just setting up a table in a city in the South, and it was during an event, and I put educational materials on the table, and I staged a double Dutch contest for the youth, and that was the launching of Two Smiles, and that was in 1982. So Two Smiles started with my commitment to youth based on my own personal experiences as an adopted child who wanted to, I had been blessed to have a good life, and I wanted to find other children who would need the type of support that I had been sensitized to want to bring to them.
Now, it's something that you just said, talking about double Dutch. Now, I haven't heard or dealt with double Dutch in so many years. And I remember going back years ago as a child, as a teenager, there were quite a few young girls, ladies, who could just jump double Dutch. They would run in and they would jump, 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 and then they would stay in and turn all around and jump on out. I never could do it. Now, is that big, in your expert opinion, since you ran the double Dutch contest? First of all, could you jump double Dutch real good?
No.
No. Oh, okay. Well, I wasn't the only one. I thought, I said, is it because some of us have two left feet? It is very challenging. It's a gift. Oh. Yeah. Well, all these years I find out that was the gift that I didn't have, because I wondered why everybody else could do this double Dutch and I could not do it. But it's interesting to know, since you had a double Dutch contest, what was the prize? Who jumped the longest without getting out and they get the prize? What was the prize?
Well, I have this little song that I had learned as a child, and I incorporated it into a story that's called Minerva. Which was really based about my life and as growing up in the segregated South, and I used my life to try to give children historical content through storytelling. So in this story, Minerva is outside just before she goes in, and she's going to watch television and find out about the Civil Rights Movement. But before she does, she's outside playing with her friends. So as I'm telling this story to children, I pretend that it's so. And I say to the children in the audience, can I have someone who will volunteer to come up and turn? And the children pretend that they are going to do the double Dutch. And so what I use to determine who the winner would be is I do this song. As the children are turning and jumping, I do last night before, 24 robbers came knocking at my door. I got up, let them in. They hit me across the head with a rolling pin. And these are the words they said to me. Old lady, turn all around. Old lady, touch the ground. Old lady, show me your shoe. Old lady, how old are you? So if they're able to do those things to reach the place, and then I count 1, 2, 3, 4. And so whoever it is that can turn around, touch the ground, show their shoe, and do it the longest,
they win.
They win.
Okay. That's good. I like that little song. I think I might want to learn that. But what did they win?
Oh, I had all sorts of little gifts.
Little gifts.
Because I really wanted everybody to walk away with something. So, and they wanted someone to walk away with something. They were all happy that they got something and that their friends got something.
Ooh,
yes,
boy. So they all had little gifts that would probably be germane to what children wanted and what they would like to have at that particular
Yes,
time.
and that brings us to a critical and essential concept that I believe in and that I promote, and that is cooperation, and not competition. And so in learning, we recognize that each child learns in a different way. So I assist people in setting up environments and creating activities that challenge each child not to compete with the other, but to identify the needs to improve and push themselves to learn as much as they can. And so that was just, I do that in terms of everything that's an activity that I do with children. Find opportunities for them to be affirmed, their gifts and their talents. Find an opportunity to encourage them to engage themselves, to be responsible, to be lifelong learners, and do everything that I can to create an opportunity that they can see themselves capable of processing and learning, information and learning.
Good. All right. Now, that is very good, and I think is very admirable what you're doing. But I'm certain that there are times when you run into situations where the children, or at least one or two, might be a little difficult to work with. How do you handle situations when the children are not as cooperative and difficult to work with? Because those are major challenges that many of the teachers and educational givers are running into today.
Well, there's a number of elements to be considered in that. One is the nature of education is one in which it can support the natural way that students learn, that is involving all their senses, and create learning experiences for them that appeal to all their learning styles. So that means trying to create an environment that does more than gives a child a lecture, wherein you stand and you just talk to the child. Try to create an environment that is based on a respect that the child may need a visual to help them to understand. They may need to get engaged in some kind of manipulation of materials in order to become engaged. They might need something auditory to support whatever it is that they are finding. Just listening to words doesn't really give them the meaning that maybe also listening to music or something that is visual and auditory could help them to learn. So I find that I studied Montessori, which taught me and helped me to understand how children learn. And I also got my doctorate degree in educational leadership, and I studied differentiated learning and how schools that are being very progressive, that are even scoring well on standardized tests, make sure that the learning environment addresses each child's specific learning style.
Okay.
So
now,
that's just one little piece of it. The other piece has to do with expectations. So many times we expect that the child will relate and act the way perhaps we were taught to relate and act. And the children of today are faced with different challenges. They're faced with challenges in their home. For example, they're faced with challenges of not having recesses. They're faced with the challenge of tremendous testing and assessments that are not always reflective of what they know. All right. And there are environmental factors that influence their behavior. They're exposed to things on television and music that bombard them with images and words and realities that are far beyond their years. So when we relate to the child and we see the child or the children behaving in a certain way, we have to look at what we're engaging them in. If it's something that they're learning, we have to see if it's really engaging them. We have to look at the child's background and what kind of challenges the child might be facing in home or in the environment. And we have to bombard the child with love instead of just wanting them to be something we want them to be, being impatient because they don't do exactly what we need to do for them at that moment.
Okay, I just want to interrupt here. One thing I want you to answer for me. Everything you said, good. I followed it very well. But I'm saying how all of those things that are excellent in how you're reaching a child that is not going to learn straight from lecture, but how would you, coming into an environment, assess that? In other words, you already know that this, maybe you have a group of maybe 7 or 8 kids. 6 of them are going along with the program. There are 2 that are just not going to do it. So you already know at that point that there are 2 who need to have one of all of those myriad of things that you just said. They have to be reached another way. So my question is, how do you, at that on-site assessment, what do you do? Do you have another person working with you that will take those 6 with the standard group? How do you assess what those 2 are going to need, which might be one needs one thing, one needs another? That's what I'm going after. What's the process of assessing that these 2 are going to need something else?
Well, that's a common situation, the one that you just, and there are universities and teacher education programs that are recognizing that you're going to be facing those challenges. And so there are techniques that one can use in that instance where you don't put the focus on the child's behavior. You continue to address the educational objective. You continue in your activity. And there are things you do, like you go over to that child and you whisper in the child's ear, I need you to be quiet. Or you say to the group, I'm really happy with how you're behaving. You're doing a good job, and you're doing a good job, and you're doing a good job. And I need all of you now to follow what I'm doing. So there's a number of techniques, or if the child continues, you go over and you say, may I speak to you for a minute? And just briefly, you take them away from the group, and you say, I really need for you to pay attention now, okay? And you let the child go back, and let's say the child continues, and then maybe you say, I'm going to have to insist that those children who are able to pay attention and cooperate will remain with us today, and those children who are not able to do so, we will have to find somewhere that you can be, because we are going to have our lesson today. So I hope you can decide, and give them a little time, I hope you can decide to be a part of what we're doing. If not, I'm going to have to ask that you leave.
I see. Okay. Now, that gives us an idea of how we're dealing with that. And I think it's wonderful that you have so many different techniques that you can use in order to draw the children into a place where they can become a part of the team and a part of the group and learn with everyone else. But in the time that we have left, Dr. Patricia,
Yes.
tell us one major challenge that you personally had to overcome in order to do what you're doing.
Well, let me see. What comes to my mind immediately is what I just described. Going into an environment where you have so much you want to share with the students, and you're confronted with these attitudes and this disruption. Many times you're confronted with disrespect. And even as you're practicing the best of classroom management techniques, you will still find in many instances that there's a lot of disruption in the classroom because so many children are coming from such severe circumstances. So, of course, I wanted them to do what I needed for them to do. So it was a real test for me to decide that I would continue this work. And the only way that I could continue it was that I had to be willing in myself to shift from expectation to a love. That's why I talk about love. I felt that I was with these children for a purpose. There were many people in my life who were patient with me and taught me many things. I felt in a way that I had a responsibility to also stand some youth on my shoulders. And I knew there were no students that needed it more than the students that I have been dealing with. And so I had to resort to spiritual practices. I had to resort to prayer. I had to ask God to give me the strength to have the right attitude and to have the power that I would need in the situation to be able to bring about a transition.
Okay.
And so what that meant was I would have to have patience beyond the measure that I had it.
Okay.
I would have to have confidence in them, that I could reach them, that they were just not a bunch of children that were acting out, but that they had the ability to recognize when someone cared, and maybe I could reach them in that space.
Very good.
And I felt better doing that. And I found that I built relationships that I could never have built with the children.
And relationships are very important. Yes, it is. So we have been talking with Dr. Patricia Djaw, and she's been talking about what she does to enhance and better our youth with regard to education. It's been very enlightening, and I hope that you have enjoyed all she has shared with us on today. So in closing, I would like to give Dr. Patricia about a good 20, no more than 30 seconds, just to, if you had to give someone some advice about getting up off of that couch, going out into the world, pursuing their dreams, not letting anything stop them, what would you say to them? Take about a good 20 to 30 seconds.
Well, this is what I would like to say to you. I would like to say that you have value. You are important. You were born for a reason. You were born for a purpose. And the world needs what it is that you are here to share with us.
Yes.
And I would say the challenges that you are facing and how you're feeling, there are many, many people who have felt the way you felt and faced the challenges that you have faced. And I hope that this conversation that I have been given the opportunity to have with you can be what can motivate and validate you in a way that you can recognize you have the power within yourself to change and to improve your own situation.
Very good. We thank you for joining us for another week here with Dr. Marcy Bryant, and we hope to see you next week. Thank you.